Before we begin today's episode, we want to offer a content reminder. This conversation continues to explore experiences within the Indian boarding school system, specifically at Holy Rosary Mission in South Dakota. Some of what is shared may be triggering or difficult. Please listen with care and do what you need to take care of yourself.
And we also want to acknowledge that what you'll hear in this episode reflects one person's experience at one boarding school. Boarding school histories and stories vary widely, and Cecilia's memories may not reflect the experiences of all survivors, families, or communities. We honor those many truths and hold space for them as we continue this conversation. Welcome back, relatives. In our last episode, we began hearing Cecilia's deeply personal reflections on her time as a student here at Holy Rosary Mission. Today, we continue her story, but through a different lens.
For this episode, we've invited two young Lakota women, Esperanza Rama and Tierra Baird, to help guide the conversation. We asked them to join us because they bring perspectives that are different from our own, perspectives shaped by their generation, their lived experiences, and their place in this ongoing story.
Exactly. Their questions come from a younger lens, from women who inherited the impacts of boarding school through family, community, and identity, but did not live through the system themselves. That creates a unique and important space for dialogue. Their curiosity, their reflections, and the way they engaged with Cecilia's story opened the door to a new kind of intergenerational learning.
And we felt it was important to make room for that, because boarding school history isn't just something we talk about. It's something each generation has to make sense of in its own way. Esperanza and Tierra help us explore how younger Lakota people encounter this history, what stands out to them, and what they want to understand more deeply.
So today, you'll hear them guide Cecelia in a conversation about daily life at Holy Rosary Mission, the routines, the relationships, the challenges, and the moments that shaped her childhood.
We are grateful to both of them for stepping into this conversation with respect and openness. And now, let's continue learning from Cecelia.
Mitakuyepi relatives, welcome back to Stories of Lakota Elders. I'm Tashina.
And I'm Jennifer Irving, and we are honored to continue our powerful discussion and journey with someone who needs no introduction at this point, Miss Cecelia Fire Thunder.
Yay! Today, Cecelia is taking us back to her teenage years here at Holy Rosary Mission, as it was formerly known, and as is still known to all of those who attended it as Holy Rosary. But she's going to take us back to her teenage years at Holy Rosary during the 50s and 60s. And it was a time of deep hardship, cultural suppression, isolation, but also lots of laughter, strength, and spiritual growth. So we're excited to have this conversation today.
Yes, and we are joined today by two incredible guest co-hosts, and I'll have them introduce themselves. Both are Makpia Luta alumni, and both are are on their own incredible journeys today. So I will just turn it over to you all. Tell us where you're joining from today, what you're working on, what your day was like, whatever you want to share with us. Espi, you want to go first?
Petu Washte, Lakota Piki Waga Kingte, Hawa Shuchia Kiwa Waga Kingte, Esperanza and Machiapi, Nalakomi Chajaki Wasui, Lutawi and Machiapi, Lila Dayawahi, nice, Lila Ushia Lawahi, nice, Ushia Wawagake. Lea Petiki wana Nebraska wati na waiwa wakantia ekta wablawa na ish top kapsiliapi washkate and apeti na ish lakotiapi level wanji wa uspe wake na ish apeti yokila Chante Mawashte. My name is Esperanza Mendoza Rama. I currently go to school in Nebraska, and I'm here on a golf scholarship, and in my sophomore year of college. I'm really grateful to be here, and I speak humbly with you all.
Ayatuashted, Chontemate Napechuzapi Sto, Alakomi Trajeki along Gluhamani Machapi, Nahawashichia, Tierberde Machiapi, Ogla Nasi Changu Malakota, Nashina Hemacha, Prahisinte Oshpe Emataha, Eash, Minishota, Washi Echamu. So, Dayawachianke, Dayawachiankapi. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Tierra Baird with an English name, but my Lakota name is Woman Who Carries Their Songs. I am Oglala, Sichongu, Lakota, and Dene, and I am from the Porcupine community, but I am currently working and living in Minnesota. So, yeah, really happy to see you all here today.
At this point of our podcast, I'm going to turn it over to Esperanza and Tierra to kind of lead us in our conversation with Cecelia.
Wopila Tishina. So just going back to like going to school itself, like what was a typical day like for you? Like waking up, meals, classes, chores, like what did that look like?
Well, I guess we'll start in the ninth grade, teenage years. So actually, teenage years are probably, 13 in the 7th grade, 14 in the 8th grade, 15 in the ninth grade, 16 in the 10th grade, 17 in the 11th grade. So I think here again, everybody's experience was different of all the students that came to school here. And the difference is the kind of family you came from that allowed you to be okay about being here. We look forward to coming back at the end of the summer. Unlike other boarding schools, we got to go home after graduation in late May. So we were home June, July, all of August. 3 months we were home. And then no matter what day September 1st fell on, we came back. They brought us back to school. And we look forward to coming back, especially in the high school years, in the ninth grade years. Because, if looking at my yearbook here from 1963, in the high school years, many of us started first grade and we stayed here. So we created really great relationships, friendships. And then you have to remember, in those days, we didn't have telephones, we didn't have internet, and a lot of people didn't have vehicles. And so the economy from the 1900s to probably about the 1950s, even today, is just having a car was a blessing. So when you take a look at the economy and what's going on, and that's what I like, I'm able to go back and see what was going on in Pine Ridge in those early years that allowed me to appreciate what my parents did for me. Okay. And so I'll start, and also at Holy Rosary Mission, Drexel Hall is where the girls stayed. So we had the little girls' dormitory here, which was first grade to sixth grade, in the little girls' dormitory. And back there, the big girls' dormitory was 7th to 12th grade. So 6 grades in each one. We got ready all summer to come back to school. Our fathers sometimes worked in the potato fields. The economy was bad. There was no jobs. So our dads either worked as farm hands or ranch hands. And my dad was a hard worker. And so he would work in Nebraska. I'm going to go to 9th grade. So that summer of my 8th grade, we went back to Kyle. One thing that my dad did was he bought my mom a little red pickup. And that little red pickup was a taxi cab for all the aunties because they didn't have a car. So they would hire my mom to take them to the grocery store, put gas in the car, chug it down to Gordon to go buy groceries, chug it back to Kyle. So my mother in her little red pickup was the taxi driver for all her cousins who had no cars. So we had a lot of fun, at bologna sandwiches and laughed and visited. You look back at that time and the financial poverty was very real. We never felt that. No matter how bad things were, there was always laughter and food. and love. So my dad would send back money. So if you were boarding school at Holy Rosary Mission, you had to wear a uniform. Then they ask you to bring 6 pairs of socks, 6 bloomers, and 6 t-shirts and put your name on it. Because that's what all year you wore this. So my dad would send home money. I didn't know this till later. So my mother would go use the Sears Roebuck catalog. You see, we're very spoiled nowadays. You can jump in your car. How long does it take to Walmart? From hour and a half? Yeah. In those days, we didn't have stores like that, especially on the red. So we bought everything mail order. There's Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, mail order. So my mom would pick out everything we need, get a money order, send it. We get a package in the mail with our bloomers, our t-shirts, and our socks. Then you put your name on it. We got ready to come back to school. And we look forward to coming back to school. Why? Because we could see our mushkins. All the girls that we grew up with from first grade, everybody went home. Also, at that time, Oglala, from Kyle to Oglala seemed like going to the moon, okay? So even though our districts, all the Wombly, Allen, Martin, Kyle, Porcupine, Wounded Knee, hey, in those days it seemed like a million miles away. And then, so we didn't see each other all summer. So we look forward to seeing each other in the spring, in the fall when we came back to school. Despite what anybody says, we look forward to coming back.
When Cecelia talks about looking forward to coming back to school, it really makes you think about how age shapes experience. Maybe younger students felt more dread than excitement.
Yeah, especially as you get to high school age when those friendships and other relationships matter more. For a lot of teens, school becomes one of those main places where connection happens, even at boarding school.
Because we got to see our mushkins. We got to see and experience. Everybody grew, especially in 9th grade. From 8th grade to 9th grade, some of us got boobs. Oh my God. Also, where did those come from? I don't know. I guess choke cherries, that we were laughing and talking about how I got boobs and somebody didn't, and all in Lakota. The other thing was about 80% of us were Lakota speakers. And no matter what anybody said, we still spoke Lakota here at Holy Rosary Mission. And you know why we spoke Lakota? We also knew who was going to squeal on us. We know which of those mixed blood girls who don't speak Lakota would say, sister, they're talking Indian, or the sister might hear us, okay? And so we were smart. So we kind of look around before we talk Lakota in case somebody heard us and told on us. So no matter what anybody said, Dora Brave, Henrietta Tobacco, all of us that spoke Lakota still spoke Lakota. We walk behind the bushes, we go behind the laundry room, look around, make sure nobody heard us and speak Lakota. And so that part of the myth, and then blaming. That summer, my dad was sent to Tony. Having a permanent was the thing. So before we came back, we all got a permanent. Curly hair. So we all came back, just curly hair. Oh, just gorgeous, So my teenage years here were joyful. We got up like everybody else at 6:00. The bell rang. Got up, went to church. We went to mass every day, 20 minutes. Then we lined up, went to breakfast. Then we lined up, and in the morning, the big girls went to class. So our day was split, okay? So the high school girls, right after breakfast, we came to the classroom to start our course of study. The little girls from first grade to 6th grade stayed and cleaned the kitchen and the dining room. Somewhere before lunch, the bell would ring, and then the little girls would go to class. The big girls would come downstairs, and they would go to the kitchen, work in the kitchen, work in the laundry room, until the bell rang and we had lunch. And then after lunch, the big girls went to the classroom. The little girls cleaned the dining room and the kitchen. And then the bell would ring. The little girls would go to class, maybe about 3. And the big girls would come to do their job. You worked in the dining room, or you worked in the kitchen to cook for all 500 students, boys and girls. You went to the laundry room where we did laundry for all the kids in school, and the sewing room. My favorite place was the sewing room to sew and make uniforms. So we were very busy. And so that went on. And then every 4 times a year, they would change us. So you could work in the kitchen, and then next time you'll be in the dining room, next time you'll be in the sewing room, and next time you might be in the laundry. And so we worked and went to class. And today I attribute a lot of my skills. I'm the best housekeeper in Martin, South Dakota. That's all there is to it. I know how to clean house. Excuse me. After I cook or anybody cooks, I wash dishes and put everything away. And I mop the floors. I have a clean house. I have a boarding school house, okay? That's what we tease around. Oh, my boarding school girl kicked in, I'm going to go wash dishes, Oh, my boarding school girl kicked in, I'm going to go clean my yard, So we laugh about it, but we learn some very important skills here at boarding school.
I really enjoyed hearing about how you and your friends were really excited to come back together and to talk about that. And so I guess that kind of leads into the next question of about your friendships or your mashkes. Who were the people that were in your corner at that time, and what are some stories that you guys some funny stories that you guys had while at your time there?
Well, first of all, Hechina Lila Ota Lakota Wogla Kapunko Kihipi. Dakuku Lakola Cheska Ugogla Kapi. So we shared a lot of stuff in our first language. Sometimes we didn't interpret it. So Lakota Wogla Kap Dakuku Ogda Washdeshni Wogla Kap. So in Lakota we could talk about things that you can't talk about in English. Interesting. And Francine and I talked about that. Francine Redwell and I started first grade, and we're still here, Mushgate, and we talked about our experiences. And then she attributes here. She said we our sisterhood. She said our friendships that started in first grade lasted till 2 days. In fact, a lot of the girls that were still friends, we talked. It started in first grade. We came from all different parts of the reservation, and we connected. And the other interesting thing was that sometimes, and this is psychology, that means we talk about things that are not good. And then so we're able to talk to each other in Lakota about things that we experienced that weren't good, maybe at home or in the classroom. And then so Francine said, Hena itakuku ukikameki tua ukokiakapi. So we were able to share some not pleasant things in Lakota to each other, that we were able to share it with somebody that we didn't say in English to another person. Does that make sense? So Lakota ya piki opna takwe imaka meki washichuya epseowaki. So I was not able to express that feeling in English, but I could express it in Lakota. So we shared some of those feelings with each other in Lakota, which to me, I said, Hechet, huh? She said, Adyak. So we talked about expressions as little girls. And so in the Lakota language, we could express things to each other in Lakota that we couldn't express in English, because we hadn't learned English very well by that time to use a word or define how we were feeling. So we knew our feelings in Lakota. Does that make sense? And we took all of our feelings in Lakota so we could express that. And we hadn't learned feelings in English yet. Okay? Now we know, damn it. Yay, too much. Anyway. And so we back to Wotakuye. And the Lakota word Wotakuye is to be related, which is not necessarily by blood. Wotakuye in Lakota. Ni Lakota hunter, Lakota oyate ki yuha kinitaku wichaya. So in Lakota, we say all Lakota people are our relatives. You've heard that, haven't you? Mm-hmm. The Wotakuye is all Lakota people are our relatives. And so that concept came to boarding school with many of us who were Lakota. And they carried over into my relationship with Dora Brave, Henrietta Tobacco from Oglala, Francine Red Willow from Wambly, and other women from other districts. I didn't know who they were when I first went to school here, but it doesn't matter. We're all relatives in the Lakota concept. That to me is one of the pieces that so many people who study boarding school don't understand. So we created those relations. Even all the guys, these guys, all the guys here that we went, we're just always happy to see each other when we see each other, and we visit and we laugh because even though the boys were on that side and the girls were over here, they separated us. We had co-ed classrooms until the 8th grade. And then in the high school, they split us up. So the boys stayed over there and the girls, 9th to 12th grade, had classes over here. And so years later, they told us the only reason they did that was the hormones were kicking in.
Cecelia also starts talking about wotakuye here and how those relationships inside the school really mattered.
From older girls helping the younger ones adjust, like waking them up to use the bathroom, it shows how they took care of each other and created kinship in that space.
I think too, like how much those friendships and that kinship lasted not just in the school years, but for decades afterwards. I think that's important for folks to recognize as well. I have a question about, I guess, the dynamics of like the big girls and the little girls. Like how did that play out in the dormitory life? I mean, you talked a little bit about the separation when it came to the day, but what was that like at night? And how did, were you all in the same area in the dorm, or how did that play out?
The 1st to 6th grade girls were in the little girls' dormitory, which is just down the hall here with the Jesuits. We had 1st to 6th graders, okay? And then the 7th to 12th graders are over where the guest rooms are. That used to be the big girls' dormitory. So I talked about this before, but in the little girls' dormitory, the first couple of months, there was a lot of crying. It's the first time children were separated from their moms and their family. So it's a normal reaction to cry at night because you want mommy or you want grandma. But there was always a lot of crying at night, especially for the 1st, 2nd, 3rd graders, okay? The 4th, 5th, 6th graders. So what we would do, also there was a lot of bedwetting. And the bedwetting, I attributed today what I know was the emotional response of not being home in your own bed somewhere on the reservation and your mom and grandma were nearby. So that was the emotional reaction, the bedwetting. And so what we would do, and me and some of the big girls, we'd go wake up the girls. We'd wake up the girls and make them go pee-pee. So about 2 months later, nobody went to bed. So we looked out for each other. The other thing is if we see a little girl in the little girl's playroom crying, we go up to them and say, we comforted them. It's a cultural norm to comfort a little kid. So we did that, and people comforted you. And sometimes if you were, even in the 4th grade, it's about feeling kind of sad and lonely, somebody would say, hey, are you feeling sad? Yeah, come here, let me hug you. So we hugged each other a lot. And so the cultural response to a little girl crying, you didn't let her cry by herself. You went up and held her and hugged her so she didn't feel like she was alone. That cultural response doesn't matter if she came from Retro Cable. That's a little girl crying. My job as an older girl is to go and hug her and make her feel better. You see? So that's the cultural stuff kicked in here too. So we did not, if you see a little girl crying, how dare you ignore her? If you ignore her, what kind of Indian are you? So we're taught to look out for each other, help each other, comfort each other. You don't even have to say anything. All you do is you reach at you and make that noise. Oh, and pretty soon they feel better and they go run off and play. So that went on in the little girls' dormitory. Mm-hmm. Lakota women, Lakota girls practiced Lakota things, looked out for other little girls, even though you didn't know them. And it carried over into high school as well. So our culture sustained us. Things that we don't write about, but the action and behaviors of how we treated each other spoke for itself. So we stopped bedwetting because we wake them up and they go pee-pee. So we help them that way.
Okichiapi.
Okichiapi. Okichiapi.
Helping each other. I love that. Today in Makpialuta in the classrooms, the older kids come to the elementary and visit and read with the younger kids. So, they create those opportunities for the older kids and the younger kids to interact and look out for each other and talk about sweetheart days in the schools. But maybe that was too young and maybe that was frowned upon. I don't know. But I don't know, Esperanza or Tierra, are you guys interested in, because I happen to know firsthand. Nay, just kidding. I won't say anything. But, high school, junior high, or middle school, those are times where there's crushes and you're starting to notice the other.
And I think of especially if they're trying to keep you from dating each other, then it's like, oh, well, now I really want to do it even more and find a way, whatever it is. Was it like that? Like, what would you guys do? Meet at night or meet you in the hallway? The notes and what? How did that go?
I guess it depends on where and how you grow up. And in my Tiosh by Inkbata, Manil Untipi. Now, Leila is gone, Hoshkalaka. There's had a lot of male relatives. Leila, we grew up with a lot of male relatives. And I look back and they treated me like a boy. I was, sometimes that's a girl. No, that's Cecelia. I was climbing trees and all kinds of stuff with the boys. I hung out with the boys and did all kinds of crazy things with the boys. And today I think back, they never said, "Oh, you can't do that. You're a girl." So I grew up with a bunch of boys, and they challenged me to do what they did, and I did it. And I think that set the foundation for how I looked at men. Second thing is you cannot date your relatives. So in our Tioshbais and our community, you can't have a boyfriend because everybody's related to you. So at boarding school, there were different boys from different communities that you may not be related to, okay? So on a personal level, I didn't pay any attention to boys because I grew up with boys, I also knew Uchimitaki, when my menses started. Before my menses started, Inamikaki, Emagnakina, it's going on one into Shala. So my mom said, "You're getting close to that age. You're going to wake up one day and you're going to be bleeding down there." When he Ash Nikujeshni. She said that means you're changing. My menstrual cycle. So my mother, and all girls, so my mother warned me ahead of time that one day I would bleed and not to get scared because I was changing. I don't want to be a woman. I want to be a girl. I don't want to bleed, And then my auntie then took it to the next level. And there's a whole ceremony that goes with the menses. And we're bringing that back now, the coming of age ceremony. And anyway, so I was, when at Holy Rosary, I looked at all these boys, I look at these pictures, Chuck Cooney and all these handsome Lakota men. Fred Bush, he was just a handsome man. These are all my classmates. And they were just classmates. I had no interest in them whatsoever, sexually, because I was not there yet, okay? So they became just friends. They were friends. And then, but there was a lot of flirting going on, whatever that means, a sparking. We call it sparking, And then, so in the 8th grade, we had an 8th grade classroom in the old building. So the high school boys would write notes. They would write these notes like this, and they would fold it up like this. And then they would send it with the 8th grade girls to the high school girls. And that was the love letters. Oh my God. We used to open them up and read it. God, those Indian boys were mushy. We laugh. Go, so there was that passing letters back and forth in some of these lives. And they did have relationships. They didn't discourage having relationships. And so we would get together as the dances. We would go on picnics. So we had social hours. And then people met up and they found a boyfriend here, a girlfriend here, but they were limited in the time they spent with each other. So there was a relationship. Some people met here and married. My sister and her husband met here, graduated the same year, and they married, and they're still together. So lots of relationships started here, especially because they weren't from your Tioshpaya. So you can meet somebody who's not from your Tioshpaya, so you can have a relationship. Even today, you can't tell, hey, Takuya, don't be talking to him. They're related to you, you know. So that rule still stands. So a lot of people were met here. And then we used to laugh and talk and tease, you know. And I'll be honest with you, I really didn't pay attention to boys. I still wanted to be a little girl. I wanted to climb trees, ride horses, got more important things to do than worry about some guy liking me. Isn't that interesting? And only because I grew up with boys and my dad and my uncles always looked to us. They treated us as human beings. They never said, you can't do that. They never said, oh, only boys are supposed to do that. So I grew up in a Tioshpai that led me to believe I could do anything I wanted. And being a wife and a girlfriend was not the most important thing for me. Even today. I only married and had 2 children because I promised my grandma I'd have 2 Oglala kids. So I fulfilled my promise, went on birth control, had sex, but had no more babies. You like that, huh? Yeah, but I got to choose my partners. They didn't choose me. Hey. So anyway, back to flirting. Yeah, there was a lot of flirting, a lot of courtships, note passing. People had boyfriends and girlfriends, and it was normal. It was the normal. And then we had social hours. We had a lot of dances, and so people got to interact. But they separated us in the evening. So the boys went back over there, and the girls came back over here. So that might be the blessing. What do you think? I think that's the blessing. So there were a lot of relationships that came out of here.
Cecelia keeps coming back to healing, especially how she's learned to understand her own triggers over time.
Like the way she's shared about the sunflowers and how seeing sunflowers used to be really, really hard for her. And now she's really able to embrace them and celebrate them. Even without saying it directly, she kind of speaking to her younger self, letting her know she wasn't abandoned or alone.
Geez. So thank you for sharing all of the stories and your experiences that you've shared with us this far. And I think in hearing all of this, you know, and thinking back, what would you say to yourself when you first arrived at boarding school, you know, looking back at the little girl that you were and to all the experiences you've had this far, what would you say?
Well, let's go all the way back to first grade. So when you drive on the roads today, along the highway, what do you see? Sunflowers. Not the cultivated sunflowers in the fields, but the sunflowers that are growing along the roads. Okay. So when you go to the junction and you go to that back road to Porcupine, what do you see? Sunflowers. So sunflowers were a trigger for me. I could never understand after I came home why every time I saw sunflowers, I get this real sadness inside of me. And then it would dissipate. And so one day I did a lot of work in Eagle Butte. So I was driving up towards Cheyenne River, go up that back way, remember? And then go across the river, going into Cheyenne River. Well, I was going up that road and oh my God, the sunflowers, you know, the cultivated sunflower fields. All I saw was the field of sunflowers going all the way to the sky. Oh shit! Oh man, this overwhelming feeling came over me. Oh man, I said, all right, deal with this. I pulled over to the side of the road. I walked into that sunflower field. I walked through it because those sunflowers are pretty high. They're 6, 7 feet high sometimes, the stalk. I walked through it. They were scratching me. And I just, oh my God. I laid down. I fell on the ground. I cried and cried and cried and cried. Just, oh, long held up feelings came out. Just cried and cried and cried. Oh, pretty soon I just quieted down, and then I could feel the sunflowers stroking me. And they were saying, it's okay, it's okay. And then I got up and I walked back to my car. Man, I was a mess. My hair was all over, I had dirt all over me. If the car pulled up, they would have called 911 and said, there's a crazy woman out here. But they didn't. No car pulled up, okay? And at that moment, I realized the trigger was the sunflowers. So we used to drive from Kyle to the back way roads to the 18 and come here. And on that ride from Kyle to here, all the back roads had sunflowers. So those sunflowers reminded me that I wasn't going to get mom's hug. I wasn't going to get my shunka's hug. I wasn't going to get my dad's hug for a while because they were going to leave me at boarding school. And so the sunflowers were a trigger of that feeling from a long time ago, 1953. And so walking into that sunflower field and crying and then the sunflowers. So today, the sunflowers don't trigger me because I was able to understand what that deep feeling I had inside of me was. Okay? And so that's the part of the healing. And that was the only thing. So one of the other things, and a lot of people talk about it, is the emotion. So today, as we began to take a look at the emotional feelings, the sense of abandonment. A lot of Lakota children received a lot of physical attention. A long time ago, we got hugged a lot. We got held a lot. Sometimes even if you don't say anything, just having somebody hold you and make that noise, make that little noise, you felt really good. So at boarding school, there were moments when you needed somebody to hold you and say, that moment of loneliness, that moment of sadness, and yet nobody was there to comfort you. Where did you put that feeling? Huh? Probably in your kneecap. You put it in your ankle bone. And so we store those needs and desires. So that day in that sunflower field, all those years I needed my mom to hug me. As a little girl, I left it in that sunflower field. So abandonment is a really strong emotion that children feel but cannot describe. Does that make sense? And so you feel so bad and so sad. And then next time you see them, you're so happy to see them, you forget that feeling. Hey, mom and daddy, oh, you're here. We hug it and everything. But that emotion that you felt is still inside of you. Does that make sense? And so we're really good at putting away our feelings. And so for me, abandonment, and then the word abandonment, emotional abandonment, is a lot more prevalent than rejection. Rejection to me is a deeper emotion that some children experience when they're removed from their home by social services and put into a car and taken to foster care. That is rejection. That's a whole different emotion. Does that make sense? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, so that first year, and so I was able to deal with that. So I didn't realize at first grade, second grade, third, all those years they drove across from Kyle to here, and those damn sunflowers made me sad. So I know I was able to get rid of that. So anyway, my house is full of sunflowers, by the way. I got sunflowers here, sunflowers there. My bed, I have a dark quilt made out of sunflowers. My pillows are sunflowers. Excuse me, but me and some sunflowers make peace.
Uh-huh.
Dang, that's awesome. I feel like so that's kind of the more like you shared like the where that hurt came from, kind of part of it. And you talked a lot about how your dad and your family, your tio's like shaped you into like obviously the woman that you are today. But also like those teenage years of spending those months with your mashkes in the dormitory and stuff. How do you think those shaped you into the leader and the woman that you are today, that you have been?
I think for me, Lila, Lakota wasn't Lakota, so we were always interspersing Lakota with English, and then especially describing certain kinds of feelings. We still didn't know how to describe certain feelings in English, but we could describe it in Lakota because that was our first language. That, and then within the relationships that we built, I can't remember fighting with any of my mushkins. I can't remember getting into physical fights with anybody. We didn't, some of them did, but some of us didn't. And so Francine and I were so I said, did we ever fight? No, she said. No one in our grade, we didn't have fist fights. And there were fights. Of course there were between the girls, And so I think that, again, that and maintaining that relationship, even though we were not blood relatives, we were Lakota girls. And so that connectedness helped us, sustained us. And we trusted that's the other one. We trusted each other. And to know that they have your back.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you were feeling kind of lonesome or sad, they never said anything. They'll say, oh, here we Pat. We're really good at that. How many are good at doing that with people? Here we just they don't say nothing, but that feels good, isn't it?
Julie was saying that the other day because she was talking about how she didn't like how one of our roommates, we were just talking about how like we felt disconnected from one of our roommates because it's like we feel like we pour a lot more into her than she does to us. And so we were talking about how Julia was telling me how she was feeling sad on the couch, and she was like, Esperanza, you didn't even ask me about why I was really feeling sad. You just went and got a blanket and came and lay with me on the couch, and then we watched the show. And she was like, that was all I needed in that moment. We just cuddled and watched the show, and it was okay. And it's just like that's kind of the Hiwe and the that's what it reminded me of. But that was just the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Comfort each other, being there for each other. She was just talking about how she like our roommate, she wouldn't think to do that, and it was just grateful that we have each other to think to do that for each other.
So back up a little bit. The curiosity is a wonderful gift because curiosity gets you to look for answers. Curiosity, it takes you into corners where there's information. So this job has been a godsend for me to fill the missing pieces and the curiosity, the missing pieces of the women who were sisters, the nuns who worked here. People always talk about how mean they were. Well, of course, you had 54 girls in the dormitory. You had to get them to line up. There's only one nun. Of course, she's going to scream and yell at you, right? Girls, line up. She's going to yell at us because there's 54 girls. So we all have to line up, So yelling was common amongst the nuns because they had to make sure we heard. I can honestly say I have never been hit by a nun in all the years I went to school here. I got yelled at, but never hit. Of course, the common hitting your fingers with the ruler, that's common. Everybody, they did that to everybody. In a classroom, they hit your finger with the ruler. Yeah, I mean, that everywhere. Corporal punishment was acceptable across America in all the schools at one time. Jennifer can talk about that too. With corporal punishment, with slapping you on it or putting you over them and spanking you. So corporal punishment was okay across America in all the schools. And so whenever people talk about boarding school and, how mean the nuns were, well, some of them were mean, but that's because they came from a different culture. The German language was a common language. At least the first generation of nuns, Sister Winsky and I, they were just learning how to speak English. And so, again, just knowing a little bit more about the German language and understanding that, it made me realize that, they yelled at us, but then the German language is not very nice language. And so the perception is how they talk, they were mean. Does that make sense? So these are all the stuff I'm figuring out. So this job has been a godsend for me to understand and look into the gray areas for greater understanding of why and how come. And the answers are, you may not like it, but that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is, and it's over and done with. And so you can't turn back the clock. You can't go back in time and fix anything. We have to, just move forward. And that's what our ancestors want us to do. They don't want you to linger in the past. They don't want you to linger in anger. They don't want you to linger in blame. Move on. Move on. And then they're with you. All your ancestors are inside of you and they're cheering you on and they're happy for you. Mm-hmm. Every time you try something new, oh my goodness. Even me, I'll have my mother. So remember, girls, your DNA, all the women you come from are inside of you. Your mom, your grandma, your great grandma, all the women, especially if you're mixed blood. You got Dene over here, Lakota over here. Me, I have French, Mexican, and Cheyenne, Arapaho. I got 5 Uchis inside of me. Damn it, how could I go wrong? And every one of those Uchis, their DNA is in you. And sometimes I tell people, did you ever have an aha moment? Have you ever had an aha moment?
Yeah.
When all of a sudden, hey, that's your Uchi talking to you.
I love it.
Only Jakapi. So if you have, like I have 5 Uchis inside of me, they're inside, their DNA, their memory of who they are. What they saw, what they experienced is inside of me. And how can I not be successful when I have 5 women guiding me? Huh? How about dreams? How about you girls dream? You ever dream of a solution? You go to sleep and you have something and you dream and you wait. Grandma came last night. I've heard that. Haven't you heard that? Or you woke up and you had an answer. And you never forget, you have all the Uchis for many years inside of you. They're cheering you on. Not only that, but they're also guiding you and they're giving you information. Mm-hmm. Never forget that. You're never alone. And they experience things you never experienced. They grew up in hardship. They grew up when there was no running water, no electricity. They grew up before the reservation era. They had to live off the land. They grew up where they had to skin the buffalo hides to make teepee covers. Come on now, can you do that? Can you skin 19 buffalo hides to cover a teepee? Huh? Can you go and pick berries and dry it so you have food in the wintertime? Come on. Mm-hmm. They're really happy that I use a meat grinder to grind my choke cherries today. I was telling Tashina, I said, I got that meat grinder. And I smudged it. I said, Uchi, I'm really sorry. I'm going to try this differently. So I have like 5 gallons of choke cherries and I ground up all the choke cherries and then I have a dehydrator. Oh my God. Put it in the dehydrator. I made 150 choke cherry patties.
We're coming to your house for winter food.
Well, our grandmas would have used those tools, right? If they had them, they would have used them.
Yeah.
One thing that, I don't think they would ever be upset. They'd be like, why aren't you using that? It's right there. Plug it in. Go, right?
So each one of us has at least 5 generations of women inside of us. And their memory is in their DNA is in you. And they can also guide you if you pay attention to them. And they had a hard life at many times. I'm sure they had. So it doesn't matter. We're here today. And we are all of those women that went before us. But let's capture the best. And then also reach out to them. Sometimes I'll drive home. Like last night, Uchi Haway was out there, right? The full moon. I always tell Lakota women, talk to her. Uchi Haway, her power, energy belongs to us. Tako inika make you okay. Uchi Haway, something bothering you. Go outside. talk to her and say, Unchi, I really need help with this. But the full moon is our helper. She's our therapist. She's our doctor. And sometimes, even me last night, when she went, I talked to her. I said, I have no complaints. I just want to tell you the good news. So you don't always have to bitch. You can always say, you can always share good news with her. She wants to hear that once in a while. We're not miserable all the time, damn it. And I always get mad at people because they only pray when you're miserable. What? Pray when you're happy. Pray to say thank you, you know? Instead of just, and so some Indian people think the only time I pray is when I'm having a hard time. Well, pray when you're having a good time and say, well, Pila, thank you.
Wow. Toward the end, Cecelia reminds us that our relationships don't end, they just change.
And that our ancestors are still with us in ways we can connect to every day if we're open to listening.
Cecelia Lila Wopila Tanka for this time of cool things. I love we're standing in the shadows and are in the light with our grandmothers. I love that. I will carry that with me for a long time. Your reflections on dorm life and life during boarding school is always, I think you bring up a good point that, those of us who weren't in that time and era, we have our ideas about what it is based on what we've heard and these horror stories, but we forget that there were real people with real life experiences, with friendships and courtships. And I'm sure there was mentorships there too, people that helped you out, teachers and community members that worked here that sometimes we forget about that, the big kind of negative narrative always overshadows just the day to day, right? Just the high fives in the hallways and the giggling and all of those things that make up real life. So I just want to say thank you for sharing all of that today, and yeah, just all the beautiful words and stuff that we'll carry with us. I think each of us will probably carry something with us today. So
Cecelia.
What did you girls learn quickly?
I think that was for you, Esperanza and Tierra. What have you learned today? She asked.
I feel like just like a lot of the thoughts that I have, I feel like a lot of them was affirmed. Like just like of the thoughts of like just to tell little kids that you could do anything can change everything. I feel like your teachings about the language I think are super important to me, and like with just like keeping going and speaking every day and like affirming my feelings of like I wonder I'd like when you were talking I just wonder like of my feelings of like how I'm better able to express myself in the Lakota. I wonder if that's like my grandma's inside of me just so happy to like see me speak Lakota now and are like the so it's like those kinds of things where it's just like you're making sense of some of my thoughts kind of, and I feel kind of overwhelmed with joy and just overwhelmed with happiness to be here and be able to participate in this conversation. So I'm a little bit stumbling with my words, but it was just awesome to hear you talk. That's all I got. Wopala, Uchi, wopala.
Okay.
I'm also the same. I feel the same as SB. I'm really grateful for this conversation. I always think that there are certain times where our paths align and there's things happen for a reason, and so I'm really grateful that on this day I just was able to be part of this group and to be able to listen to you and to Cecelia. But when you were talking, I was thinking about something that my great Gaka used to say. My Uchi used to say that my great Gaka used to say, "Wodakuye na wocheke echela," like only your relatives and prayer is important. And I was thinking about that throughout when you were talking about like your father or your mashkes, or just like the time that you spent with your unchi, that it's really important to be surrounded by your family, and then always, to pray and to rely on, because, you can pray to your unchis that are within you. You can pray to Hawi. And I always think those are good reminders that are a way to ground yourself, and in times whenever you are struggling, but also in times when you're feeling joy. And so I'm really glad that you shed light on a lot of those today.
So my final story is, and this is where I came after my little girl spirit. And so at ceremony, Uncle Rick, and he was helping me heal. This was 20 years ago. And he said, in ceremony, my little girl came and said, he watched it. My little girl's spirit was still in the little girl's dining room. In the little girl's dormitory. At ceremony, she said, I want her to come get me. And so he told me what to do. I was teaching a class at Porcupine College Center. And so in ceremony, they don't say do it on October 3rd at 4 o'clock. They don't say that. They trust that you'll know when that moment is. Besides, I checked my class in, and then I better go get her today. That moment hit me at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I dismissed my class and give them the homework. I said, I'll see you next week. I got in my car. I came here, parked outside Drexel Hall. I came upstairs. Little girl's dormitory was here. The door was locked. However, there was a space this high from the floor to the door. I had my offering, and I stuck it under the door. And Cecelia Jane Chihiowai. So my Lakota name that was given to me at birth, because that's when we got our names, was Kawachiwashnemi. Kawachiwashnemi Chihiowai. And so symbolically, I put the offering and called her, and she came out. So I picked her up. I carried her downstairs to the playroom, to put her in my car seat. I drove home. I talked to her all the way. I got into my driveway, my headlights, and there my headlights were all my mom and my auntie who all left, and they were all standing there waiting. I said, "No, she said. And so my little girl spirit went home with all of my ancestors, and she left. And that was a very important ceremony. And what that ceremony taught me was no matter where we lived at any time, we leave a piece of ourselves. And so you have to go after yourself.
These stories matter. They heal, they teach, and I just am very grateful to you all for being here and sharing these stories with us, sharing your stories and being so courageous and being vulnerable and being open. So wopila. What a powerful way to end this conversation. Cecilia's story about returning to Holy Rosary decades later to call her little girl spirit back. Wow, that moment holds so much truth. It reminds us that we all have the ability to reclaim the parts of our spirit that were hurt or left behind, and that doing so is an important step in our own healing journeys.
Yes, that reflection from Cecelia really stays with you. And seeing Esperanza and Tierra witness that lesson in real time, it was beautiful. Today's episode really showed the impact of creating a space where younger Lakota women can sit with, learn from, and connect directly to someone who lived through the boarding school era.
It truly did. Intergenerational conversations like this help bridge gaps, deepen understanding, and honor the resilience that lives within our communities. Watching these young women enter that space with curiosity and courage was inspiring.
We're deeply grateful to Cecelia for sharing her truth and to Esperanza and Tierra for bringing their hearts and questions. Their presence shaped this episode in such a meaningful way.
As you reflect on this conversation, we encourage you to create space in your own lives for listening, for learning, and for intergenerational dialogue grounded in humility, love, and care.
From all of us here at Luta, thank you for joining us.
Doksha ke. We'll see you next time.
Come, God,
Stories of Lakota Elders is an independent podcast recorded at Machbialuta Studios on the Machbialuta campus in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. This project is supported in part by the Better Way Foundation, with studio support from South Dakota Public Broadcasting, and editing, sound design, and production support from our friends at Podtex. You can listen to Stories of Lakota Elders wherever you get your podcasts.